I'm the first Canadian Prime Minister to speak at CANSEC. I don't know why the other ones didn't come. This is fantastic. What a great way to start the morning. Thank you, David, Minister McGuinty, for your leadership. Secretary of State Fuhrer, for your leadership. President Doug Guzman, for your leadership of the Defense Investment Agency. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Kristen, for your vision, and everyone in this room, vision to build Canada's defense and security industry. You know, I'm here because the world, and you know this far better than I, but even I sense it, the world of defense and security are changing rapidly. Here at CANSEC, 300 exhibitions, over 100 delegations, the largest CANSEC ever. It is the first held at the newly renamed Cohere Center. If you don't know who Cohere is, you will in the coming years in the world of transformation of artificial intelligence. And it's a sign, that name is a sign of just how integrated technology is becoming with defense. Tout le monde ici présent sait que les présomptions qui ont défini des décennies de politique canadienne en matière de défense et d'affaires étrangères ont été chamboulées. Les menaces auxquelles nous faisons face sont nombreuses et se multiplient. Les incursions dans l'Arctique canadien aux attaques contre notre cyberespace. La nature même de la guerre est en rapide évolution, poussée par la prolifération de drones, de systèmes autonomes et d'armes en orbite. Des conflits pourraient émerger plus près de nos frontières qu'avant, et de nouvelles armes réduisent la distance qui nous en sépare. The world's changed. We all know that. Canada must change with it. We get that. And that's why just 6 weeks after forming government, we announced our ambitious plan to rebuild, rearm, and reinvest in the Canadian Armed Forces. We embarked on this project first and foremost to protect Canadians, to defend our territory, to secure our borders, and to protect our sovereignty. Over the past year, Canada's new government has worked at an unprecedented pace and scale. We've enacted the largest increase in defense investment in Canadian history. We're now protecting Canada's high north and Arctic with year-round armed forces presence on land, sea, and air, and the abilities of the Canadian Coast Guard with new resources. And we've given every Canadian Armed Forces member a raise, the largest in a generation, because their pay should reflect the weight of their responsibilities. These things have an impact already. Recruitment in the Canadian Armed Forces is the highest in 3 decades. Canada has achieved NATO's 2% GDP defense expenditure target half a decade ahead of the original schedule. I have to say, for the first time since the fall of the Berlin Wall. I don't know if that's an accomplishment or an admission, but we're there. We are working towards NATO's 3.5% of GDP in 2035 defense expenditure target through major new investments in strategic capabilities, including a modernized submarine fleet and one of the world's largest fleets of icebreakers to strengthen our defense of the Arctic. We are already meeting NATO's 1.5% target for critical defense infrastructure, from upgraded ports, airports, air bases, to new northern operational support hubs to deter threats in the north. And our fiscal framework, our budget, has already provisioned to achieve 4% of GDP in total defense spending by the end of this decade, ahead of NATO's timetable. We will make additional provisions to achieve that 5% NATO target, the 2035 target, at or ahead of schedule. La première mission du gouvernement fédéral est d'assurer la protection des Canadiens et Canadiennes. Nous le faisons d'une manière qui nous permette de créer des carrières bien rémunérées, de renforcer nos chaînes d'approvisionnement intérieur et d'offrir un maximum de retombées à notre économie. C'est pourquoi nous avons lancé d'importantes mesures pour adapter notre système d'approvisionnement en matière de défense et favoriser une construction à grande échelle qui soit rapide, souple et efficace. Nous avons lancé l'Agence de l'investissement pour la défense afin de simplifier le processus d'approvisionnement pour en faire un seul processus centralisé qui réduit les dédoublements d'approbation et les formalités administratives. Now, about time, you say, yes. C'est le moment. L'Agence d'investissement pour la défense développe les capacités souveraines essentielles à notre aptitude à défendre nos frontières, nos océans et l'Arctique. Et elle contribue à garantir que chaque dollar dépensé maximise les carrières, les industries et les retombées économiques au Canada. Le Canada, et merci Madame Goudon, le Canada dirige les travaux visant à établir la Banque de la Défense, de la Sécurité et de la Résilience. Cette banque va mobiliser de financement à faible coût au Canada et chez nos alliés de l'OTAN afin de renforcer la production et les technologies en matière de défense. In February, we announced, as the Minister mentioned, I think you all know, we announced Canada's first ever defense industrial strategy, a bold plan to get our armed forces what they need, when they need it, a plan to scale Canadian defense companies and to put $500 billion to work in strategic sectors of our economy. The framework is simple: build, partner, buy. We are focused first on building in Canada, directing procurement to Canadian firms where we have those sovereign capabilities. Where we can't build alone, we're partnering with like-minded allies, attracting investment, transferring IP, and integrating supply chains so more public dollars flow back to Canada. And to that end, this year, Canada became the first non-European country to join the EU's Safe Defence Procurement Initiative. Now, using that new framework, we're beginning to move ahead with ambitious major investments for our defense and security. And today, as part of our steadfast commitment to defend Canada and to protect our allies, I'm pleased to announce that Canada has entered into negotiations to procure Saab's airborne early warning and control aircraft. With its suite of advanced sensors and mission systems, Saab's GlobalEye will be a key resource for Canadian Armed Forces to detect and deter threats across the Arctic. The GlobalEye, better get the branding right. GlobalEye's airborne, we'll check the contract, make sure we've got the right. That's why we have Guzman and Fuhrer on the case. The GlobalEye's airborne surveillance capability can track objects and signals up to 650 kilometers away. And they'll share in real time that information with the Canadian forces and our allies. At the heart of the GlobalEye system is the Canadian-made Bombardier Global 6500, an aircraft that includes 20% U.S. content, which gives a sense of just how integrated these defense systems are. Saab and Bombardier's expertise is transforming a modern jet into a cutting-edge surveillance aircraft with altitudes of over 30,000 feet. The GlobalEye partnership will establish Canadian-based production capability, including aircraft conversion and missionization, engineering collaboration, R&D, and potential participation in radar component production, positioning Canada as an integral part of the GlobalEye global supply chain. En tout, ce seront plus de 3,000 emplois qui seront soutenus dans le secteur aérospatial canadien. Et pas moins du tiers de la flotte prévu d'appareils GlobalEye sera produit au Canada au cours des 15 prochaines années. Cela représente au moins 40 appareils, y compris les commandes à l'exportation pour les Alliés construits par les travailleurs canadiens. At least 40 aircraft. The Saab GlobalEye combines airborne early warning and control with long-range air, sea, and land surveillance in real time, as I said, in a single platform. It's advanced, it's available, and operational. It's one of a kind. This is an example of Canada's defense industrial strategy in action. It builds Canadian strategic autonomy, creates Canadian jobs, and reinforces Canada's position as a global leader. And it's the product of choice for many of our partners, including France, Sweden, the UAE, and more to come. A strong, resilient defense industry, and that's why today I'm also announcing a series of measures to improve our defense industry partnerships. And in doing so, we're fulfilling commitments we made when we launched that defense industrial strategy a few months ago in February. The first thing, we are transforming our industrial technological benefits policy. We're directing investments towards the areas that most matter for Canadian competitiveness. So foreign contractors that secure Canadian defense contracts will now have stronger incentives to subcontract to Canadian firms and invest in our supply chains. Said another way, they will get more credit for doing so. We're cutting red tape with a new 90-day approval standard, so companies, especially small businesses, get faster and more predictable decisions. We're introducing something called the Strategic Investment Transaction. And this is a new crediting system for high-value investments, such as building or expanding a Canadian facility, funding R&D in Canada, or transferring IP to a Canadian company. In short, we're going to reward those investments that build lasting defense capacity and industrial capacity in Canada. With this new ITB policy, we're making it more valuable to work with Canadian companies by treating those that have at least 70% Canadian content value as if they had 100% Canadian content value, the so-called Canada Boost. The second thing we're going to do is launch a new strategic partnerships framework so companies can work more closely with government to build the sovereign capabilities that the Canadian forces need. So rather than one-size-fits-all procurement, our new framework will catalyze robust partnerships, with government sharing operational priorities and industry bringing your innovation and your expertise. Companies designated as strategic partners will invest in Canadian R&D, grow our domestic supply chains, hire a Canadian workforce. And in return, you can rely on government to be an anchor customer, accelerating approvals and supporting your exports. S'y retrouver parmi les programmes du gouvernement fédéral peut s'avérer difficile, en particulier pour les PME qui font leur premier pas dans le secteur de la défense. C'est pourquoi notre troisième mesure consiste à créer un nouveau service d'orientation qui va nous permettre d'aider les entreprises canadiennes à accéder au soutien dont elles ont besoin pour assurer leur croissance et soutenir la concurrence des marchés de la défense et de double emploi comme l'intelligence artificielle, les technologies quantiques et la fabrication de pointe. Ce service fera le pont entre les entreprises et les programmes fédéraux adaptés à leurs besoins, partenaires provinciaux et possibilités d'exportation et du personnel spécialisé sera intégré à même les associations de l'industrie. Ainsi, les entreprises vont recevoir un service personnalisé. Nous ne nous perdrons plus les détails administratifs et surtout, le gouvernement pourra répondre plus vite aux demandes. All of that says concierge service for our companies. Finally, to ensure the partnership between government and defense industry remains in sync, we will be establishing a new Defense Advisory Forum. That will be comprised of senior industry executives drawn from across our 10 identified sovereign capability areas and from every region of the country. They will advise government on how to best grow our defense industrial base, our investment needs, and they will identify barriers to that growth. The forum will be co-chaired by the Minister of National Defense and the Secretary of State for Defense Procurement. Together, all these measures will help ensure that our defense industry can build bigger and can build faster. We're moving from an approach, a regulatory approach that has to be said that checks boxes, that used to check boxes. We're moving to one that builds our industrial base, our defense industrial base, with speed and at scale. And we're just getting started. We've committed to doubling our defense expenditure by the end of this decade. 10 years, Canada will invest $180 billion directly in defense procurement, $290 billion in defense and security-related infrastructure, and we expect to create an additional over $125 billion in downstream economic benefits. We will boost government investment in defense-related research and development by almost 85%, and we plan to increase our defense sector revenues by over 220%, our defense exports by 50%, and to create 125,000 new jobs in the sector. These are stable, rewarding careers, including for the more than 80,000 Canadians who already work in our defense industry. It extends from engineering and compute to the skilled trades. De nos jours, pour protéger notre souveraineté, la défense conventionnelle ne suffit pas. Il faut également un accès fiable à des capacités stratégiques essentielles, telles que des communications spatiales et un accès sans entrave à l'intelligence artificielle. Il faut une souveraineté numérique, à commencer par une solution technologique à l'ensemble des infrastructures de renseignement. So from the domestic ammunition production to over-the-horizon radar to quantum, cyber, AI, and drones, we're building and partnering with Canadian materials, Canadian expertise, and Canadian workers across this country. We're protecting Canada's ability to act independently in a more dangerous and divided world. You know, we used to build in this country. We had built one of the largest aircraft and naval fleets by the end of the Second World War. Canada built one of the world's first autonomous submarines, one of the first drones used by NATO forces. The message today, thanks to you and our new strategy, is we are now building again. We are reinforcing the foundations of the true North, the strong, the free. And going forward, Canada will be defined not only by the strength of our values, but also the value of our strength. Thanks to you. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.